The screen door slammed like a gunshot in the sticky Carolina heat, splintering the illusion of summer safety. Evelyn's voice cracked through the magnolia-scented air, raw and trembling. "Riley, I can't pretend anymore. I love you and everyone knows." My heart seized, a wild bird trapped in my chest, as the neighbors' porch lights flickered on one by one, illuminating the faces that would never look at me the same again. I fled that night with nothing but a duffel bag and the taste of betrayal on my tongue, the gravel crunching under my tires like bones breaking underfoot. North Carolina blurred into a rearview ghost, its humid embrace a memory I swore to outrun, chasing the promise of anonymity in a city where rain washed secrets clean. Portland welcomed me with relentless drizzle, a veil of gray that mirrored the fog in my soul. I rented a cramped apartment above a coffee shop on Alberta Street, the kind of place where ivy climbed the brick walls and baristas called you by name after one visit. My name was Riley Harper back then, 22 and adrift, a graphic designer scraping by on freelance gigs for indie bookstores and craft breweries. The work kept my hands busy, sketching logos of ferns and whales, symbols of quiet endurance. But at night, when the city hummed with distant sirens and the patter of rain on the fire escape, the emptiness crept in like fog off the Willamette. I avoided mirrors not because I hated what I saw, but because they reflected a girl who had once believed in forever. Evie and I had been woven into each other's lives since high school in Willow Creek, that speck of a town nestled in the Piedmont foothills where tobacco fields stretched like faded quilts under endless blue skies. She was the golden one, with her sun-kissed blonde waves and laugh that echoed like wind chimes in the live oaks. I was the shadow, curly-haired and quick with a pencil, drawing her portrait in stolen moments behind the bleachers. Our love bloomed in whispers, in the hidden coves of the Yadkin River, where the water ran cool and the herons stood sentinel. But secrets in small towns are like kudzu, choking the life out of what they entwine. It started with a careless note slipped into my locker, a Polaroid of us tangled in the back seat of her old Chevy, lips brushing in the dim glow of a dashboard. Someone found it, or maybe they followed us one humid July evening. By senior year, the whispers turned to stares, then to sermons from the pulpit of First Baptist, where the pastor thundered about abominations under the watchful eye of stained-glass saints. Evie tried to shield me, her apologies a litany of, "I'm sorry, Riley, but they don't understand." Her family, pillars of the community with their sprawling farmhouse and annual barbecue that fed half the county, demanded she choose them or the scandal. She chose silence, and in that choice she chose them. The outing hit like a nor'easter, my name scrawled on bathroom stalls, my parents' faces crumpling in church pews as if I died rather than dared to love differently. I packed under the harvest moon, its silver light pooling on the pine floors of my childhood room. Mama pressed a locket into my palm, her eyes red-rimmed but resolute. "Go find your light, baby girl. We'll be here when you're ready." Daddy just nodded from the doorway, his calloused hands twisting a handkerchief, the weight of unspoken grief hanging between us like Spanish moss. The drive west took 3 days, a ribbon of interstate unspooling through Appalachia's misty hollows and the flat sprawl of Oklahoma plains. Each mile etched the wound deeper, a scar of abandonment that pulsed with every radio ballad about lost loves and second chances. Portland's bridges arched like promises over the river, and I told myself this was rebirth. New zip code, new zip file for my resume, new zip in my step to match the locals' laid-back stride. Yet the first winter cracked me open. Snow dusted the evergreens like confectioner's sugar, but inside my apartment, the radiator clanged like a faulty heartbeat. I dated sporadically, women with tattoos of cherry blossoms and stories of queer marches in San Francisco, but their touches felt like echoes, distant and dissolving. One, a barista named Lena with piercings in places that made me blush, lasted 3 months before I pushed her away, murmuring excuses about deadlines. Truth was, Evie's ghost lingered in every shared coffee, every sunset walk along the waterfront, her absence a hollow in my chest that no amount of microbrews could fill. Spring brought tentative green shoots pushing through the sidewalks, and I threw myself into community, volunteering at a shelter for queer youth, where wide-eyed kids with backpacks full of fears reminded me of my younger self. There was Jasper, 16 and freshly outed by a jealous ex, who sketched dragons on napkins while we talked about safe houses in Eugene. Holding space for him felt like holding a mirror to my own fractured youth, a quiet act of defiance against the shame I'd carried across state lines. But shame is a stubborn root, twisting deeper in solitude. On my 24th birthday, I climbed Multnomah Falls alone, the mist veiling my tears as water thundered down basalt cliffs. The trail was slick with lichen, each step a negotiation with gravity, much like my days. At the top, wind-whipped and breathless, I screamed into the gorge, a primal release that echoed back as birdsong. It was the first time I named the pain aloud. I was loved and lost. I am enough. Summer unfurled in farmers' markets bursting with heirloom tomatoes and lavender bundles, scents that tugged at memories of Carolina peach stands. I started a blog, anonymous at first, chronicling the ache of exile in prose laced with sketches of rain-streaked windows and coffee rings on journals. Readers trickled in, their comments like fireflies in the dark. Your words make me feel seen. Healing isn't linear, but it's possible. By fall, the leaves turned to fire along the Columbia River Gorge. And I met Theo, a non-binary potter with clay-flecked overalls and a smile that crinkled their eyes like autumn paper. We bonded over glazes and grief, sharing stories by the kiln's glow. Theo saw the fractures in me, the places where light slipped through, and for a while I believed in mending. But when they proposed a road trip to the Oregon coast, visions of crashing waves mingling with Evie's voice calling my name from a decade ago, I backed away. I'm not ready, I confessed over chamomile tea, and Theo understood, their hug a gentle anchor in the storm. Winter returned, softer this time, with holiday lights strung like constellations across the Pearl District. I hosted a solstice gathering, friends gathered around a table laden with cider and gingerbread, their laughter a balm on old wounds. As the clock struck midnight, we wrote intentions on slips of paper and burned them in a brass bowl, watching embers rise like prayers. Mine read, "Forgive the girl who ran. Welcome the woman who stays." Yet forgiveness is a river, not a dam, and mine flowed fitfully. Dreams of Willow Creek haunted me. The creak of porch swings, the hum of cicadas, Evie's hand in mine under star-pricked skies. I'd wake with salt on my lips, wondering if she had married the boy from the hardware store. If her life bloomed in the soil I'd fled. One gray April morning, as cherry blossoms dusted the streets like fleeting snow, a package arrived at my door. No return address, just my name in looping script that stopped my breath. Inside, a pressed magnolia petal, fragile and veined with gold, wrapped around a letter sealed with wax the color of Carolina clay. "Riley," it began, "I've spent years chasing shadows of you. It's time I brought you home." The paper trembled in my hands, ink blurring under sudden rain from my eyes. Evie. After all this time she had found me. The letter lay open on my kitchen table, its edges curling like the waves of doubt crashing through me. Evie's words danced across the page in that familiar slant, each sentence a thread pulling at the seams I'd so carefully stitched over the years. "Willow Creek isn't the same without your light," she wrote. "Mama's garden wilts for want of your sketches, and I've kept your old room as a shrine to what we lost. Please come back. Let me explain." Explain. The word tasted like ash, a bitter reminder of the night she chose silence over solidarity, letting the town's venom wash over me alone. I folded the letter, tucking it into the locket Mama had given me, its chain now warm against my skin like a pulse from the past. Portland's rain tapped insistently at the window, urging me toward some decision, but my feet stayed rooted, heavy as river stones. Days blurred into a haze of what-ifs. I walked the bridges at dawn, the steel bridge's cables humming like harp strings in the wind, watching freighters glide toward the sea with cargoes of forgotten dreams. Theo noticed the shift, their potter's hands pausing mid-throw as I confessed over lunch at a Vietnamese spot on Division. "Going back doesn't mean staying broken," they said, eyes steady as kiln fire. "It means claiming the pieces you left behind." Claiming. The idea lodged in my chest like a seed in fertile soil, sprouting questions I hadn't dared water in years. What if forgiveness wasn't erasure, but excavation? I dug out old journals from under my bed, pages yellowed with entries scrawled in the frantic script of a girl unmoored. "Evie, why didn't you fight? Why did you let them win?" The ink bled under my thumb, a testament to tears long dried. Work became my refuge, Designs for a queer-owned winery in the Willamette Valley flowing from my stylus like wine from the barrel. Vines twisting into hearts, labels etched with phrases like from roots to renewal. The winemaker, a woman named Cora with silver streaks in her braid, shared stories of her own closet days in the 80s, her voice gravelly with survival. Love doesn't ask permission, Riley. It just grows. Her words echoed as I boarded the train east, a sleeper car rocking me through the Rockies' snow-capped sentinels. Portland receded like a watercolor wash, its greens giving way to the high desert's ochre expanse, then the greening swells of the Midwest. I sketched the landscape's moods. Thunderheads brooding over prairies, dawn painting the Mississippi in strokes of rose and gold. Each mile chipped at the walls I'd built, revealing glimpses of the girl who once chased fireflies with Evie in dew-kissed fields. Willow Creek emerged from the haze like a half-remembered dream, its welcome sign weathered but welcoming still. Home of the finest peach pies. The bus station was a relic smelling of diesel and distant rain, and there she stood under the awning, unchanged yet utterly transformed. Evie Monroe, 30 now, her blonde hair cropped to a bob that framed her face like a halo, eyes the color of storm-tossed seas. She wore a sundress printed with dogwoods, the fabric whispering as she stepped forward, arms outstretched but hesitant. "Riley," she breathed, voice a melody I'd replayed in nightmares and lullabies alike. I froze, the duffel slipping from my shoulder, the air between us thick with unsaid elegies. We drove in silence, her old Chevy resurrected, its dashboard now adorned with a crystal that caught the sun like captured lightning. The road wound past tobacco barns sagging like weary elders, wildflowers nodding along the shoulders in defiant color. Evie's hands gripped the wheel, knuckles pale, and I watched the landscape unfold, each bend a memory uncoiling. The swimming hole where we first kissed, lips tasting of honeysuckle and possibility, the church steeple piercing the sky like an accusation. She pulled into the driveway of her family home, the farmhouse's wraparound porch strung with lanterns that glowed like fireflies in the gathering dusk. "Mama's in town," she said softly, killing the engine. "But your room is yours. Always has been. My room." The words unlocked something primal, a sob rising unbidden as I followed her up the steps. Inside, the air was redolent of cornbread and lemon polish, ghosts of childhood suppers lingering in the rafters. She led me upstairs, past framed photos of Evie in cap and gown, her smile bright as the Yadkin in flood. At the door to what was once my sanctuary during sleepovers, she paused, hand on the knob. I never changed it. Couldn't bear to. Pushing open the door was like stepping into a time capsule. My old twin bed draped in the quilt Mama had pieced from our school dresses, walls papered in faded maps of imagined adventures. On the desk sat my sketchbook from senior year, pages filled with Evie's likeness, her profile against sunset, lashes like willow fronds. A lump formed in my throat, the room a diorama of innocence shattered. We sat on the edge of the bed, the springs creaking like old bones settling. Evie reached for my hand, then withdrew as if burned. "I was a coward," she started, voice fracturing. "When they found the note, Daddy locked himself in his study for days. Mama cried until her eyes swelled shut. They said you'd ruin me, that loving you would damn us both. I believed them, Riley. God, I believed them." Her confession hung heavy, a storm cloud over the room's dusty light. I pulled my knees to my chest, the quilt bunching like waves. "You let them erase us. One letter, one rumor, and I was the villain." I drove away thinking I was nothing. Tears traced silver paths down her cheeks, catching the lamplight. I married him because it was easy. The hardware boy, steady as oak. 2 years and it was ash. Divorced now, teaching 3rd grade at the elementary. Every day I see your face in those kids' drawings, wild and free. The vulnerability in her eyes cracked my resolve, a fissure letting in the light I'd long denied. We talked until the crickets chorused outside, unraveling the threads of resentment one by one. She spoke of therapy in Raleigh, of letters written but unsent, of planting a dogwood in the backyard as penance for her silence. I shared Portland's graces and ghosts, the way the rain mirrored my endless weeping. Dawn crept in with bird calls, painting the walls in peach and gold. Exhausted, we leaned against each other, heads touching like puzzle pieces finding home. "Stay," she whispered. "Not forever. Just long enough to remember who we are. I nodded, the word yes blooming unspoken in my chest. But as sleep claimed us, doubt lingered like dew on the windowsill. Could bridges burned be rebuilt, or would they crumble under the weight of what we'd carried alone? The days that followed were a tentative dance, steps forward and back across the floorboards of forgiveness. Evie cooked breakfasts of grits and biscuits. Her hands floured like they held secrets in the dough. We'd eat on the porch swing, watching hummingbirds dart at the feeder, their iridescent throats flashing like jewels. Conversation flowed easier in the light of day, laced with laughter over shared follies. The time we snuck bourbon from Daddy's cabinet and danced barefoot in the barn, stars wheeling overhead. Yet shadows clung to the corners. At the diner on Main Street, where Formica counters gleamed under fluorescent hum, heads turned as we slid into a booth. The waitress, old Miss Hargrove with her beehive and knowing squint, poured coffee without a word, but her eyes lingered, appraising. "Heard you were back, Riley Harper," she said, voice syrup sweet. "Town's missed your spark." Bark. The word stung, evoking the fire we'd kindled and let gutter. Evie squeezed my hand under the table, a silent vow, but I felt the old paranoia coil in my gut, the fear of being spectacle once more. Afternoons we'd wander the river trails, the Yatkins banks lush with ferns and the trill of kingfishers. Evie pointed out changes. The new pedestrian bridge arched like a lover's arm, the wild blackberries overtaking the old swimming spot. We picked berries until our fingers stained purple, juice bursting tart on our tongues, a sacrament of summer reclaimed. "Remember how we'd float here, pretending the current would carry us to Paris?" she asked, skipping a stone across the water. I smiled, the memory surfacing like a sunken treasure. "Or New York. Anywhere but here." Her laugh was a ripple, soft and spreading. "Here is anywhere if we're together." But togetherness frayed at the edges. One evening, as fireflies blinked into dusk, we drove to the old oak where the Polaroid was taken. The tree stood sentinel still, bark etched with our initials now softened by lichen. Evie traced the letters, her touch reverent. "I kept that photo, you know, in a box under my bed. It was my talisman." Jealousy flickered, irrational and hot. "While I was rebuilding from scraps, you hoarded relics?" She turned face pale in the twilight. "It was all I had left of us. Of you." The argument erupted like a summer squall, words lashing. My accusations of her complacency, her defenses crumbling into pleas. "I was 22, Riley. Scared spitless of losing everything. But I lost you anyway." We stood inches apart, breaths mingling, the air electric with unresolved charge. Then, as thunder grumbled distant, she closed the gap, forehead to mine. "I'm not that girl anymore. Let me prove it." Proof came in small graces. Evie introducing me to her book club, a circle of women with wine glasses and well-thumbed novels, their welcome warm as hearthfire. There was Lydia, a librarian with cat-eye glasses, who shared dog-eared copies of Audre Lorde, and Harper, a potter like Theo, whose mugs held stories in their curves. They listened without judgment as I recounted my exodus, nodding like sages around a campfire. Nights we'd sit on the roof under a blanket of stars, Evie's head on my shoulder, the Milky Way a river of light overhead. She'd read poetry from a battered volume, Walt Whitman on the body electric, Adrian Rich on the will to change, her voice weaving spells that soothed the raw places. In those moments the world narrowed to the rise and fall of our breathing, the scent of night-blooming jasmine curling around us like an embrace. But the past is a persistent tide, ebbing only to return. A letter arrived from my parents, postmarked Willow Creek, inviting me to Sunday supper. "We've missed you, Pigeon," Daddy wrote in his blocky hand. Mama added a P.S. "Evie's a good woman. Always was." The invitation trembled in my grip, a bridge extended over chasms of silence. Evie watched from the kitchen, flour-dusted and hopeful. "Go," she urged. "They've been waiting." Supper was a ritual of fried chicken and collards, the dining room lit by candles that danced shadows on the wainscoting. Mama's hug was bone-crushing, scented with lavender and regret. Daddy cleared his throat over Grace, voice gruff. "We were wrong, Riley. Feared for your soul when it was ours that needed saving." Tears fell into my tea like rain into a pond, rippling out forgiveness unspoken. We talked of Portland's rains and Carolina's clays, of the years folded away like linens in a cedar chest. As pie was served, warm with cinnamon crust, I felt the family's fractures mending, golden as kintsugi. Later, driving home under a canopy of live oaks, Evie glanced over. "Proud of you." The words settled deep, a cornerstone in the foundation we were laying. But as the farmhouse lights winked into view, a quiet fear stirred. What if this homecoming was just another illusion, fragile as magnolia petals in the wind? Summer deepened, the air thick with the hum of heat, lightning, and the promise of storms. Evie and I fell into rhythms that felt like rediscovery. Morning runs along the river, sweat mingling with laughter. Evenings in the garden, hands in the earth, coaxing tomatoes to blush under the sun. Her touch was tentative at first. A brush of fingers over coffee mugs, a linger on the small of my back. Each contact a question, my responses the answers that built trust like layers of glaze on clay. Yet the town's undercurrents simmered. At the annual Harvest Festival, amid booths of caramel apples and bluegrass fiddles, a cluster of old classmates approached, their smiles tight as drawstrings. "Riley Harper as I live and breathe," drawled Tommy, the hardware boy's shadow from high school, his eyes flicking between us. "Heard you two are thick as thieves again. Past is past, right?" Evie's arm stiffened around my waist, but she met his gaze steady. "Thicker than ever, Tommy. And the past? It's compost for what grows now." He backed away with a chuckle that didn't reach his eyes, but the encounter left a bruise, a reminder that acceptance was a garden still weeding out thorns. That night, as we danced slow under string lights to a cover of Wagon Wheel, I pressed my cheek to hers, whispering, "Was that brave or foolish?" "Both," she murmured, her breath warm against my ear. "Like us." Autumn arrived with a crispness that sharpened the edges of everything, leaves carpeting the ground in crimson and gold like a tapestry of transience. I extended my stay, trading freelance deadlines for local commissions. Murals for the community center depicting queer icons woven into Carolina folklore. Women like bayou sirens calling their truths. The work grounded me, paint under my nails a badge of creation amid chaos. Evie joined one afternoon, her brushstrokes bold where mine were shaded, our colors bleeding together on the wall. "Look at us," she said, stepping back, flecks of azure on her nose, "making something beautiful from the mess." The mess. It surfaced in quieter moments, like the evening we found the old Polaroid in a drawer, its edges frayed but the image vivid, our younger selves eyes alight with first love fire. Laughter turned to silence, then to sorrow. "I should have burned the bridges they tried to build over us," Evie said, voice thick. I took the photo, tucking it into my journal. Or walked them together. Therapy became our shared pilgrimage, sessions in a cozy office overlooking the river, where Dr. Elena, a soft-spoken woman with salt and pepper braids, guided us through the labyrinth of loss. We unpacked the outing like a suitcase too long closed. The terror of exposure, the sting of betrayal, the slow thaw of self-reclamation. "Trauma binds," she said. "But choice unbinds." Choice. In the weeks that followed, I chose vulnerability. Writing a letter to the town paper, not accusation but invitation, chronicling my return as a testament to resilience. Responses poured in, some laced with scripture's thorns, others blooming with solidarity. Notes from closet kin, invitations to potlucks from unexpected allies. Winter's first frost etched the windows in lace, and with it came a reckoning. Evie's ex-husband, Mark, appeared at the farmhouse door one sleety night, face gaunt under the porch light. "Heard Riley's back," he said, voice edged with old wounds. "You gonna drag her down again?" Evie stood firm, rain dripping from her hair. "I dragged myself down once. Not anymore. And Riley? She's the one lifting us." He left with a nod, the door clicking shut like a period on a painful chapter. Inside, we huddled by the fireplace, flames licking logs like tongues of absolution. "Thank you," I said, tracing the lines of her palm, mapping the future in its creases. "For what?" "For calling me home. For being my mirror." She smiled, that old sunburst, and pulled me close. The fire's warmth seeped into my bones, melting the last icicles of doubt. Outside, snow began to fall, blanketing Willow Creek in hush, a canvas for whatever dawn would paint. Spring returned as if to apologize for winter's bite. Dogwoods unfurling petals like handkerchiefs of truce across the Piedmont. Riley and I, yes we, now a pronoun reclaimed, ventilated the farmhouse, airing out the staleness of solitude for the fresh breath of possibility. Mornings found us in the kitchen, sunlight slanting through gingham curtains, trading sections of the newspaper over oatmeal studded with pecans. Her laughter at a quirky headline would ripple through me, a current reawakening nerves long dormant. We ventured beyond Willow Creek's embrace, day trips to the Blue Ridge Parkway where mist clung to peaks like lovers' sighs. Hiking trails dappled with trillium, we'd pause at overlooks, the valley sprawling below in verdant folds. See that river? I'd say, pointing to a silver thread winding through the green. It's like us, twisting but always finding its way. Riley would nod, her green eyes reflecting the haze, curls escaping her ponytail to frame her face like wild vines. She'd sketch the vista in quick lines, capturing not just the land but its quiet insistence on renewal. Those drawings became our private gallery, pinned to the fridge amid magnets shaped like peaches and herons. Intimacy rebuilt itself in layers, patient as pottery firing. A hand on the nape during movie nights, fingers combing through hair as credits rolled on old romances like Carol, where women's glances spoke volumes. We'd linger in bed on lazy Sundays, sheets tangled like shared secrets, talking until the coffee brewed cold. No rush, no reclamation of lost time. Just presence, a balm on scars that still ached in the rain. The town, too, softened its contours. My third graders crafted welcome-back cards for Riley, crayon rainbows arching over messages like, "You're brave like Wonder Woman." At recess, I'd watch her join their games, tossing a frisbee with abandon, her joy infectious as pollen on the breeze. Parents nodded in passing at pickup, some with tentative smiles, others with eyes that held the weight of their own unspoken stories. One Saturday, we hosted a garden party. The backyard a riot of azaleas and heirloom roses Mama had tended through droughts and doubts. Neighbors trickled in with covered dishes, deviled eggs flecked with paprika, ambrosia salad glistening with coconut. Lydia from the book club arrived with a bottle of elderflower cordial, Harper with a wheel-thrown vase brimming with wildflowers. Even Miss Hargrove shuffled up the path, her beehive slightly askew, bearing a pie still warm from the oven. Toasts were raised under the live oak, glasses clinking like wind chimes. "To Riley," Tommy said, surprising us all, his voice steady, "for coming back and reminding us what home means." The words hung in the honeyed air. A bridge extended without fanfare. As dusk deepened, fireflies emerged like living stars, and Riley pulled me aside to the swing, our thighs brushing in the gathering cool. "This feels like a dream," she murmured, head on my shoulder. "One I don't want to wake from." I kissed her temple, tasting salt and sweetness. "Then let's make it our reality." Challenges arose, of course, life's way of testing the soil. A freelance offer pulled Riley west, a 6-month contract designing for a Portland nonprofit, her talent sought for a campaign on queer elder care. The email arrived over breakfast, her face lighting then clouding like a sudden squall. "Go," I said, echoing her earlier grace. "I'll visit. We'll bridge the miles." She searched my eyes, fear flickering like candle flame. What if distance reopens the wounds? I took her hands, grounding us both. "Then we'll stitch them wider, with calls at dawn and letters sealed with wax. Trust the roots we've planted." She accepted, departure marked by a send-off picnic at the river, blankets spread with cheese and figs, friends toasting her voyage. As her bus pulled away, dust devils dancing in its wake, I pressed a locket into her palm, mine now, holding a magnolia petal and a tiny sketch of the oak. "Your talisman," I whispered. The months stretched like taffy, sweet but sticky. Letters crossed paths. Hers scented with Portland's evergreens, detailing fog-shrouded markets and Theo's latest exhibit. Mine inked with classroom chaos and the first frost-kissed mornings. Video calls bridged the nights, her face pixelated but luminous, our conversations delving deeper. Dreams of a shared studio, perhaps a move to Asheville's artsy hills, where mountains met modernity. Solitude sharpened my gratitude. I volunteered at the local LGBTQ center, facilitating groups for youth navigating their truths, drawing from Riley's stories of exile and return. One boy, Eli, with braces glinting like stars, shared his fear of family fallout. "What if they never understand?" he asked. I thought of Riley's parents, their supper table a turning point. They might not all at once, but understanding starts with one brave step. Yours. Holiday season arrived, snow dusting the tobacco fields like powdered sugar. Riley surprised me, appearing on the farmhouse doorstep eve of Christmas, cheeks flushed from the chill, arms laden with a Douglas fir strapped to the roof of a rental car. "Couldn't face the lights without you," she said, snowflakes melting in her curls. We trimmed the tree by firelight, ornaments tinkling like bells. Glass blown by Harper, stars cut from my students' art. Mama joined, her stories of Christmases past weaving through the boughs, Daddy humming carols off-key as he strung lights. Dinner was a feast of ham glazed in pineapple, laughter bubbling like champagne. Midnight Mass called us to the church, its pews worn smooth by generations. The pastor, new since our youth, spoke of redemption not as judgment but as grace, his sermon on prodigal returns landing soft as snowfall. Riley's hand found mine in the dim, our fingers interlacing like vines, a quiet declaration amid the choir's swell. New Year's dawned crisp, resolutions whispered over black-eyed peas and cornbread. Riley stayed through January, her presence a steady hum in the house's veins. We hiked the Uhori forest, trails carpeted in pine needles, pausing at a waterfall's roar to make promises, to communicate through storms, to choose each other daily. February brought her back to Portland, but the parting was laced with lace. A weekend in the city planned, flights booked like bets on forever. As she boarded, I watched from the terminal, heart full as the Yadkin in spring flood. Spring equinox neared, and with it a decision crystallized. Riley called from a cherry blossom-lined park, voice buoyant. "The contract's wrapping early. And Evie, I want to come home. For good." Joy bloomed in my chest, vast as the valley. "Then let's build it together. Studio, garden, all of it." Rebirth isn't a singular bloom but a season's turning, petals unfolding in sun and shadow alike. In the weeks that followed, we scouted properties, a cottage on the river's edge, its porch overlooking Heron's Flight, a bungalow in town, steps from the center where our stories could ripple outward. Mama helped pack my apartment, folding linens with tales of her own young loves, lost to convention's tide. "You two are the light we dimmed," she said, eyes misty. "Shine now, unapologetic." Daddy built bookshelves for the new place, his hammer strikes a rhythm of approval. Friends rallied, a moving convoy snaking through backroads, laughter echoing as boxes labeled Fragile Hearts were unloaded. The first night in our home, walls painted sage and sky blue, windows open to cricket symphonies, we uncorked Cora's wine, toasting under a chandelier of mason jars. Riley's sketchpad lay open, preliminary lines of our life. Two figures on a porch swing, fireflies orbiting like blessings. As sleep beckoned, she traced my jaw, eyes soft as moonlight. "This is rebirth, isn't it? Us whole." I nodded, pulling her close, the steady thrum of her heart against mine a lullaby. Outside, the river murmured agreement, carrying our past downstream while the future unfurled like dawn over the hills. Summer's zenith found us rooted in the cottage, its white clapboard gleaming under July sun like a beacon on the Yadkin's Bend. Riley's studio took shape in the sunroom, easels angled to catch the light dancing off the water, shelves groaning under jars of pigments the color of sunsets in storms. Mornings I'd wake to the scratch of charcoal on paper, her form silhouetted against the river's gleam, translating dreams into lines that breathed. Our life wove domestic tapestries, grocery runs to the co-op for kale and artisanal cheeses, evenings grilling trout caught from the dock, its flesh flaking silver under lemon and dill. We'd eat on the porch, feet tangled under the table, debating books, her love for the raw pulse of Blue Valentine scripts, my affinity for the layered silences in Firefly Lane. Conversations meandered like the current below, touching on everything from quantum entanglements to the ethics of forgiveness. The town embraced us incrementally, its pulse quickening around our presence. Riley's murals at the community center drew visitors, whispers turning to admiration. That Harper girl's got vision. We co-hosted workshops there, her guiding brushes while I facilitated discussions on identity's fluidity, voices young and old blending in cathartic chorus. Eli from the youth group bloomed under her mentorship, his dragons evolving into self-portraits fierce with color. Challenges tempered the idol as they must. A freelance drought hit Riley mid-August, rejections piling like storm clouds, her confidence fraying at the edges. "What if I'm dried up?" she'd mutter, staring at blank canvases, the studio's light mocking her stasis. I'd brew tea, chamomile laced with honey, and draw her to the dock where we'd dangle feet in the cool flow. Creativity's a river, love, I'd say, echoing our trail talks. Sometimes it pools, but it always moves. We'd float on our backs then, staring at cumulus castles, her hand in mine an anchor. Inspiration returned in whispers. A commission for a queer history exhibit in Raleigh, her designs weaving oral histories into visual poetry. My own tempests brewed at school. A parent's complaint about agenda pushing in my lessons on diverse families. The principal, a ally with wire-rimmed glasses, mediated, but the sting lingered, evoking old echoes of pulpit fire. Riley found me in the garden that evening, hoeing rows of zinnias with more force than finesse. "Fight or fold?" she asked, kneeling beside me, dirt smudging her cheek. "Fight," I decided, her resolve stealing mine. We drafted a response together, words measured but mighty, submitted to the paper alongside testimonials from families who'd found grace in our circle. Fall painted the landscape in fire, leaves drifting like confetti from an unseen celebration. We drove to the mountains for leaf peeping, the Blue Ridge alive with crimson maples and golden hickories. At a roadside stand we bought cider hot as hearthglow, sipping as fog rolled in like a lover's breath. "Remember our escape fantasies?" Riley mused, steam curling from her mug. I grinned, bumping her shoulder. "Paris feels pedestrian now. This us here is the adventure." Thanksgiving gathered us at the farmhouse, tables groaning under turkey and cranberry relish, kin extended by choice and blood. Theo flew in from Portland, their pottery gifts clinking in luggage. Lydia and Harper arrived with pies layered like geological strata. Laughter wove through the air, thick as gravy, stories overlapping in joyful cacophony. As pie was carved, Daddy raised his glass. To family in all its forms. And to Evie and Riley, for showing us the way back. Tears pricked, the room blurring in warmth. Riley's hand under the table squeezed. A Morse code of gratitude. Winter solstice brought ritual. Our first as co-keepers of this hearth. We strung lights along the riverbank, tiny beacons against the dark, inviting neighbors for cocoa and carols. Jasper, now 18 and college-bound, strummed guitar by the fire pit, his voice carrying an original ballad of bridges burned and rebuilt. As embers died to glow, Riley and I slipped away to the swing, blankets cocooning us against the crisp. "This life," she whispered, head on my chest, "it's more than I dared dream." I kissed her crown, stars wheeling overhead like witnesses. "And it's just beginning." Spring equinox heralded expansion. Riley's exhibit in Raleigh, a gallery night where her pieces, canvases of intertwined rivers and resilient roots, drew crowds murmuring awe. I stood beside her in a dress of emerald silk, hand at her elbow, pride swelling as critics noted the tender ferocity of her gaze. Sales funded a kiln for the studio, clay's malleability a metaphor for our mending. Yet growth invites pruning. A health scare, Mama's routine check revealing early arthritis, reminded us of time's inexorable current. We rallied, Riley sketching anatomical maps to demystify the diagnosis, me coordinating meals with church ladies who'd once whispered now offering solace. Through it, Mama's spirit shone, her garden a testament. Pain bends the branch but it doesn't break the bloom. Summer circled back, the cycle complete yet ever turning. We planted a dogwood in the yard, its buds promising pink profusion, a living emblem of our pact. Afternoons found us kayaking the Yadkin, paddles dipping in unison, laughter echoing off bluffs. Evenings we'd read aloud from dog-eared favorites, voices harmonizing in the lamplight. One golden August dusk as fireflies ignited the gloaming, Riley led me blindfolded to the studio. "Trust," she said, her hand warm in mine. Uncovering my eyes revealed the walls transformed, a mural spanning the space, Our story etched in strokes of sienna and cerulean. Youthful silhouettes fleeing shadows, converging at a river's bend, figures entwined under a canopy of light. "It's us," I breathed, tracing the lines where our hands met in paint. "Our rebirth," she affirmed, pulling me into an embrace that held the weight of years. In that moment, surrounded by the art of our becoming, I knew home wasn't a place returned to, but a life chosen daily with the one who called forth your truest self. The river outside sang agreement, its waters carrying us forward, whole and unyielding. The wheel turned once more, autumn's palette deepening to russet and umber, leaves whispering secrets as they fell. Our cottage had become a haven, its rooms echoing with the patter of bare feet and the clink of mugs on saucers, but lately a quiet undercurrent stirred, a sense of fullness teetering on the edge of more. Riley noticed it first, her sketches shifting from solitary figures to pairs gazing outward, toward horizons yet unnamed. We spoke of it over harvest stew, steam rising like incense between us. "Adoption," she ventured, spoon pausing midair, eyes wide with that mix of hope and trepidation I'd come to cherish. "Or fostering, giving a kid the home we clawed back for ourselves." The idea rooted deep, nourished by our work with the youth center, faces like Eli's evolving from doubt to determination under our wing. We researched, attended orientations in Charlotte, where social workers with kind eyes and clipboards outlined the labyrinth. Home studies, training modules, the ache of temporary bonds that might sever. Winter blanketed the land in hush, snow muffling the world's clamor as we prepared. The cottage transformed, a nursery cornered off with butter-yellow walls, Riley painting murals of forests alive with hidden eyes, foxes peeking from ferns, owls perched in wisdom. I curated bookshelves with tales of chosen families, from Heather Has Two Mommies to The House on Mango Street, spines promising narratives of belonging. The call came in late February, a voice crisp over the line. Twin girls 4 years old, siblings inseparable as tides, removed from a home fractured by neglect. "They're scared," the caseworker said, "but resilient. Like you too, from what I've heard." We drove to the agency under leaden skies, hearts pounding like drums in a procession. There they sat in the waiting room, Mira and Luna, names like celestial maps, huddled on a threadbare couch, dark curls tangled, eyes the color of storm clouds. Mira clutched a stuffed rabbit, its ears floppy as wilted lettuce. Luna sucked her thumb, gaze darting like a fawn's. Introductions unfolded tentative, our voices pitched soft as lullabies. "I'm Riley," she said, kneeling to their level, offering a sketchpad and colors. "I draw stories. Want to make one with me?" Mira hesitated, then snatched a crayon, scrawling jagged lines that bloomed into a house with a slanted roof. I sat cross-legged, Luna inching closer until her head rested on my knee. "Evie," I murmured, stroking her hair. "Like the moon outside, lighting the way." Visits multiplied, picnics by the river where they chased minnows with glee, their laughter a cascade loosening the knots in our chests. Home study passed with flying colors, Daddy installing child-proof gates, Mama knitting blankets soft as clouds. The girls warmed, nicknames emerging. Mama R for Riley's playful antics, Mama E for my evening stories spun from Carolina lore. Finalization day dawned in April showers, the courtroom in Raleigh a chamber of solemn promise. Dressed in sundresses sprigged with daisies, we stood before the judge, a woman with silver hair and a gavel that fell like benediction. "Mira and Luna Monroe Harper," she intoned, the hyphen a bridge of our making. Papers signed, hugs exchanged with caseworkers, and we emerged into sunlight breaking through clouds, a family forged in the crucible of choice. The drive home was a symphony of queries. "Can we have ice cream for lunch?" Luna piped, rabbit propped on her lap. Mira added, "And draw the river forever?" Riley glanced back, tears glistening. "Every day, sweet pea. Every day." Integration was a dance of trial and error. Nights shattered by nightmares, Mira waking with cries that pierced like shards. Luna's clinginess a vine wrapping tight. We tag-teamed, Riley soothing with songs hummed low, me with warm milk and whispered assurances. Therapy wove through our weeks, a family counselor named Clara guiding us through attachment's tender terrain. Summer solstice marked 6 months. A backyard bash under fairy lights strung like constellations. Friends gathered. Theo shaping clay figures with tiny hands. Lydia reading from a pop-up book of stars. Harper's pies sliced generous. The girls twirled in grass skirts fashioned from tulle. Fireflies partnering their spins. As dusk deepened, Riley and I stole a moment on the dock, the river lapping lullabies. "Look what we've made," she said, arm around my waist, watching Mira and Luna chase glows. "A constellation of our own," I replied, kissing her temple, the world vast and intimate all at once. Challenges persisted, as rivers carve canyons. School jitters for the twins. Myra's reluctance to release my hand at drop-off. Luna's playground scuffles born of guarded hearts. We'd conference with teachers, allies in the fold, strategies sketched like battle plans. Community murmured support, the center hosting a family art day where the girls' works. Abstract swirls of home hung proud. Fall brought firsts. Pumpkin patches with hayrides rattling like thunder. Leaves crunched under boots as we carved jack-o'-lanterns grinning wide. Halloween saw them as woodland sprites, wings diaphanous, trick-or-treat bags bulging with candy confessions. Thanksgiving expanded the table, the twins' drawings of turkeys with speech bubbles. Gobble gobble, I love you. Winter holidays twinkled with magic, Advent calendars counting down to wonder. The tree a forest of ornaments. The girls' handprints in salt dough. Riley's sketched stars, my pressed magnolias. Christmas morning erupted in paper tornadoes, squeals over dolls and puzzles, the air sweet with cinnamon rolls and belonging. Spring equinox circled back, the dogwood in full blush, petals carpeting the yard like confetti from the gods. We planted a garden with the twins, tiny hands patting soil over seeds, sunflowers for height, zinnias for color. "Watch them grow," Riley said, dirt-streaked and beaming. "Like us." As summer beckoned, a new rhythm emerged. School routines solidified, Riley's commissions flowing steady, my classroom a haven of stories shared. Evenings we'd gather on the porch, the girls' heads in our laps, fireflies winking approval. One twilight, as Luna dozed against me, Mira sketching beside Riley, a profound peace settled. This was rebirth's fullness, not absence of storm but sailing through with hands clasped. The river flowed on, carrying our collective song. A melody of wounds mended, lights kindled, home eternally called. Yet in quiet hours Riley and I would reflect, journals open like confessional pews. "The pain shaped us," she'd say, pen tracing loops. "But love? That's the light." I nodded, our fingers entwining across pages. And in that light we thrive. Years folded like accordions, each pleat rich with the patina of living. The twins turned 8 under a canopy of balloon strings and laughter, their personalities unfurling like flags in the breeze. Myra's quiet intensity channeling into violin strings that sang sorrow into solace. Luna's whirlwind energy bounding across soccer fields, goals netted with gleeful roars. Our cottage expanded. A playroom addition with lofts for dream weaving, walls echoing with the patter of feet and the strum of ukuleles. Riley's art career crested, galleries from Asheville to Atlanta showcasing her series Rivers of Return. Canvases where waterways symbolize soul's meanderings, critiques praising the luminous vulnerability. She taught workshops, her voice steady as she urged students. Draw the scars, they hold the stories. I advanced to curriculum lead at school, infusing lessons with threads of diversity. My third graders' essays on empathy, a harvest of hearts opened wide. Mama's arthritis slowed her steps, but not her spirit. She babysat afternoons, regaling the girls with tales of moonshine runners and river baptisms, her lap a throne of lore. Daddy tinkered in the garage, building birdhouses that dotted the yard like sentinels, his gruff hugs for the twins a language of love unspoken. Summers became pilgrimages, coastal jaunts to the Outer Banks, dunes sculpted by wind into castles, the girls body surfing waves that crashed like applause. We'd camp under Perseid showers, meteors streaking like wishes granted, Mira charting their paths in a notebook starry with ink. Winters meant mountain cabins, snowmen erected with carrot noses and twig arms, hot cocoa steaming tales of yore. Challenges evolved, subtler now, adolescent stirrings in the twins, Myra's first crush on a classmate sparking shy confessions over ice cream. Luna's frustration with math, tears splashing workbook pages until Riley turned equations into illustrated quests. We'd navigate as a pod, family meetings around the kitchen island, voices layering like harmonies. Feel the fear, then choose the step. The town transformed around us, Willow Creek's fabric woven richer with queer families relocating, potlucks blending recipes from afar. Our home became a hub. Game nights with Lydia's riddles and Harper's charades, Theo's visits sculpting family totems from river clay. Even Tommy, softened by fatherhood, joined barbecues, his toasts to old friends, new chapters sealing old rifts. Anniversaries marked milestones. 10 years since my letter, celebrated with a river cruise at sunset, champagne fizzing like stars in glasses, the twins minding the helm with pirate hats askew. 15 from the outing, a quiet ritual at the old oak, photos snapped anew, initials refreshed beside the girls' playful carvings. One crisp October eve, as harvest moon rose full and amber, we gathered for a bonfire, flames leaping like liberated spirits. The girls, now leggy with opinions, roasted marshmallows to gooey perfection, stories tumbling out. Myra's school play triumph, Luna's goal-scoring streak. Riley and I sat entwined on a log, her head on my shoulder, the fire's glow painting our faces in gold. "Look at them," she whispered, wonder threading her words. "Our lights." I squeezed her hand, the one that had called me from exile. "Our constellation." As embers cooled to size, the family sprawled in blankets, gazing heavenward. Mira pointed. "That one's ours, a river-bending home." Luna added. "With fireflies forever." Sleep claimed them under quilts stitched with memories, and we carried them inside, tiny weights in grown arms. In our bed, moonlight slanting through blinds, Riley traced my collarbone. "We've built a legacy," she said, voice husky with awe. "A light after the dark," I echoed, pulling her close, heart sinking in the hush. Dawn would bring routines renewed, school buses rumbling, canvases awaiting strokes, but in that suspended hour eternity held. The pain of yesteryear, once a chasm, now cradled a bridge wide enough for all. The woman who'd fled, the love who'd called, the lives we'd woven from threads of forgiveness and fire. Outside, the Yadkin murmured benediction, its waters eternal, carrying our song downstream. A hymn of rebirth, resonant and unbroken. And in the quiet, as breath mingled with breath, I knew. Home was not a destination, but this us enduring a light.